In this lecture, we're going to see how we can grab and use arguments to the main function. We have been using the main function in this course for quite a while now, but one thing we haven't really talked about is if the main function can actually take parameters. And if you look here, you see that we have put in a few parameters, and these are those we use to control some behavior on our application. The first parameter here is an integer, and it is going to specify how many parameters were passed to your program when you call it. We have been, for example, calling rooster many times, but we haven't really passed it any options. So this argument here would have been 0 for all the cases where we have been calling rooster in our course here. The second argument is going to specify which arguments were actually passed. If we look at the example here, we have a call to our rooster executable. And you see now that we have a few options specified when we call it. Arguments to the main function allow us to grab these options and use them in our program. And the second parameter here is going to store an array to these parameters in the form of const character arrays. If you look here, you can see that we have the syntax, which may be a little bit weird. We have 2 stars, but this is a way to mean that we have a pointer to characters. Or put another way, you can think of this as an array of character pointers, and it is called argv here. This is how we're going to be grabbing the options passed to our program when somebody starts it. Now that we know what these parameters are used for, let's see how we can use them in the main function. If we go down here, you see we are printing how many parameters were passed to our program when it was started, and we can print this out. And we can even loop through this array of options and actually print them out and see them on the console. This is a simple loop. We are going to be looping this many times, and we're going to be printing each argument using the array index notation as you see here. One thing I should note is that it is a convention to name your arguments like this. So you are basically going to see them named argc and argv, but you're going to see these 2 forms of parameters passed to the main function. Sometimes it's going to be star argv. The meaning is really going to be the same. Sometimes you're going to see car pointer array, and either it's going to just work fine. Now that you have an idea about the arguments we can pass to the main function, let's head over to Visual Studio Code and actually see this in action. Okay, here we are in our working folder. The current project is grab and use the arguments. We're going to copy our template files like we always do. We're going to put them in place, and we're going to grab this and open this up in Visual Studio Code. Okay, we have our main CPP file here, and we're going to remove whatever it is we don't need. Let's close the left pane here. What we want to do is to pass parameters to the main function here, and these parameters are going to be containing options that were passed to our program when it was being called on the terminal, for example. So the first one, we have seen that it's going to be an integer, which is going to say how many parameters or options are passed to the program when we call it. The second one is going to be a character pointer array, so let's say that, and it's going to be called argv by convention. And now that we have these parameters, we can actually try and print them out. Let's try and do something really simple. We're going to say stdc out here, and we're going to say we have argc parameters in our program here. Okay, it doesn't have to be complicated. We're going to do something this simple. Now we're going to compile this program and run it and see what we get on the terminal. We're going to bring up a terminal and try this out, and we are going to build with GCC. The build is going to be good. Now watch what happens when we call this program here. We're going to say rooster, and if we run this, we didn't put a space before the P here. Let's do that and build again. The build is good. We can clear and run rooster. Now we're going to see that we have one parameter in our program, and this parameter is just the name of the program here. But let's try and put in a few options. We're going to say, for example, rooster, and say option 1. You see, we have two parameters because it's going to count how many worlds you have on the terminal when you call your program, if I can say it like that. You can keep increasing the number of parameters you pass, let's say option 2 and option 3 and option 4, for example. And if we run this, we're going to see that we have 4 parameters. And if you count, we have the name of the program. This is one option. This is how this thing works. And we have option 2, option 3, option 4. The total is going to be 4 options or 4 parameters passed to our programs. Okay, now we can grab how many parameters are passed to our program when we call it. So we need to know which options were exactly passed to our program. And the details about these options are going to be stored in this character array here. So if we do some kind of loop, we can print them out. We're going to do a for loop. So we're going to say for size ti, and we're going to initialize this to 0. We're going to keep looping until I is no longer less than argc, because that's the number of options we can pass to the program, and we're going to increment I. And once we hit the body of the for loop, we're going to print out whatever option is stored at this index in this array here. The way we do that, we're going to say stdc out, and we're going to just print it out. We're going to say argv, the name of the array. We already know how to work with arrays, and we're going to use array index notation and pass in the index here. And we're going to say std_endl, but I think we should put in a little more information and say, for example, parameter at a given index. So we can say something like this, for example, and say index here, and put in a closing angle bracket, and put in an output stream operator here. I think this is going to be easier to read and follow. So we're going to know which parameter or which option lives at which index in this array here. Try to take a moment and understand what we are trying to do here. We are just looping through this array of options, and we're going to be printing each option at each index in this array here. Please note that this is a character pointer array, so we can really print each element in this array, and stdc out is going to keep printing each element inside until it sees the null terminator, and then it's going to move to the next, and we're going to see them printed out on the terminal. So we're going to build this program and make sure it is correct. The build is good, so we can clear and run Rooster. Now we see that we have one parameter in this program here, and we're going to print it out. Parameter 0 is going to be the name of the program. You see that we have the full path to our program here. This is going to be the first parameter, but we can call this with a few other options. Let's say option 1, for example, and option 2 and option 3. And let's do this. You see we have 4 parameters, and at index 0 we have the name of the program. This is really important to know. At the first index in this array, you're just going to have the name of the program. And if you are interested in grabbing all the other options except for the name of the program, you're going to have to start at index 1. You see, at index 1 we have option 1, at index 2 we have option 2, at index 3 we have option 3, and even if we put in 1000 options, we're going to be able to grab them in the main function like this and do things with them. This is really what this lecture is all about, raising your awareness on the parameters that you can pass to the main function and how you can grab them and know which options were exactly passed to your program. And this may be very useful because sometimes you may want to control the behavior of your program when you are starting it on the terminal like we do here. And you're going to basically be using this technique. You're going to use argc to store the number of parameters that were passed to your program. The first one is going to be the name of the program. You should know that. You can see that here at index 0. This is the name of the program, and we have the full path to it. And starting from index 1, you're going to have the options that you passed in order here. Option 1, option 2, option 3, and we're going to have these guys stored in different indexes like you see here. Before I let you go, let's try and put in, for example, 10 parameters. Why not? We're going to call rooster, and we're going to pass in option 1, let's say you can really put in anything here, and you see we have however many options to our program. If we try to run it, you see that we have 11 parameters. So we pass 10 options, not including the name of the program, because you already know the name of the program because we called it using rooster.exe here. But we can grab all the other things. For example, option 1, we have all these crazy things that we put here, and we can use them to do things in our program. This is really all we set out to do in this lecture, to show you how you can use the parameters to the main function. We are going to stop here in this lecture. In the next one, we're going to actually set up a simple example and show you how this can be very useful. Go ahead and finish up here and meet me there.